Welcome to the Self-Intelligence Podcast, where I have radically honest and heart-opening conversations with amazing people who are willing to share their stories and information that can have a profound impact on your life. Recent surveys suggest that suicide rates are increasing, impacting more and more people's lives. In this podcast, I speak with Emily, who is a past client of mine. When we caught up, she informed me that her partner's ex-wife had committed suicide, which sent a shockwave through their entire family and community. In this radically honest conversation, Emily offers up insights into her experience that are often kept secret due to the taboo nature of this subject. Emily shares how suicide impacted her identity, her surprising reactions and feelings of jealousy and not feeling enough in her relationship, and the inner skills and tools she used to turn this tragic event into a gift that has opened her heart to healing, forgiveness, and gratitude. A huge thank you to Emily for sharing these extremely rare insights that may be deeply healing and supportive to anyone affected by suicide. Thank you, Emily, for coming on to the Self-Intelligence Podcast to discuss a very challenging subject. We've been in contact over many years, working together, developing skills and habits to be able to have the resilience for all sorts of different challenges in life. And there's been essentially a tragedy take place in your life that you shared with me recently, that someone close to you has committed suicide. And I have such deep compassion for this area and the fact that this challenge is increasing. There's a lot of stats coming through about unprecedented levels actually of suicide taking place for so many different reasons and across the world. And there's a lot to discuss and discover in humanity to bring awareness about what's really going on with that and how much it impacts the people who are left behind, their lives, how they cope with that, the strange emotions, the strange thoughts that one may never have believed they would have in a situation like this, and how to deal with those things. It's quite a surprising and can be shocking, right? What really actually happens. Oftentimes we have an idea of ourselves, this is what I would be like, this is what I would think, this is what I would do, this is, we have such limited understanding of ourselves until things happen. So let's open this up a little bit. So what can you tell us about your recent situation?
Yes. So our family is blended. We have 4 children. 2 are biologically mine and 2 are my partner's. We had been really sitting in a pit for a bit of time prior to the death by suicide of this family member. A pit of awareness that the situation for them was not good, that mental health issues were really spiralling quite significantly. We discussed that this was a plausible path for this person who was the mother of my partner's children. So in a way, there was a level of preparedness for the possibility. I mean, I think the movies that we play in our minds, around, well, this could happen. What would that look like? What would that feel like? How would we behave? How would this work? What would this all involve? I mean, we had discussed to an extent that and set up and made some decisions for the children actually, and for ourselves in terms of where we were living, the routines, really anchoring down to a stable foundation for them day to day. And I think it was as much in hindsight for us as for them to create a sense of sanctuary and stability in our home. However, when an event like this does happen, I don't think really any movie or hypothetical scenario of, planning, thinking can prepare you for exactly what presents emotionally, physically, practically, logistically, it's a really, really life-changing moment for everyone connected to that individual who ultimately has made that choice. And, I think the added dimensions of this was, there were several. So one specifically for me was my changed identity almost instantly to the children, the biological children of this person. Who am I now to them? What does that make me? What does that change within our family? My identity and position to the person's own family, their parents, their mother, their siblings, to my partner, to his family, to my own family, to all of the people involved. It was sort of very apparent that my role was instantly changed. And that was very confronting because I hadn't really thought about that part.
And that's the key work that I'm doing certainly with self-intelligence. Is the first question is, who am I? The question, who am I? If anyone's listening to this, if someone's to ask you directly, who are you? It's a very strange question. It's not a question we get asked at school. Like, who are you directly? What is that? And it's like, I don't know. I'm a whole mixture of things, right? And one of those things is often roles, right? The roles we take. I'm a mother. I'm a stepmother. I'm a this thing. I'm a that thing, and so on. And life doesn't seem to cater to this idea of ourselves, right? It can for certain periods of time. It sort of seems stable, right? Like I kind of know who I am in terms of my name and my body and my mind and my, this thing and that and my roles and likes and dislikes. And there can be some kind of stability in that, even though all of that keeps changing, which means you're not really any of that. But when something sudden like this happens, it's a jolt to the identity, and it's a slap in the face to who you think you are, because it shows you're not the thing that you think you are.
Absolutely. And also who the people around you want you to be and need you to be. And if there's a juxtaposition, if there's a friction in that, how challenging that can be. Because, life-changing events like this, I've seen, draws people even more firmly to certainty, to anchor into, well, what is certain? What is stable? What is going to endure? Because this person that was such a prolific, part and influence and representation of something is no longer physically. So is there a transference of that now onto this other person? What can be transferred? What is separate? And that was really, I guess, challenging, but also confronting for me to face. I think, the other things that it presented was, an incredibly privileged insight into grief, and a grief of such layered magnitude, because it was the grieving of, in my partner's, if I look at it from his perspective and what I saw, a grieving of the finality of a relationship with the mother of his children and who he had been with for a decade. So a grieving of that, but also a grieving of what isn't going to be or wasn't going to be. It's sort of the grief of the future, the projection of, well, I had expected and hoped that it was going to be different and it was going to look like this. And now I'm grieving those missed expectations, that missed journey, that missed movie, if you will. Then it's the grief of watching your children grieve and trying to reconcile that pain, which is so present in children because they're not grieving the future, they're grieving the actual moment and a little bit the past, but it's far more the present factor and what's painful for them. The witnessing of the grief of all of the family And, I think in this case it was probably, I drew this image in my head of when it was happening, of circles. And, it was a very incongruent picture, because in the middle circle, in the core of this grief, was my partner, his children, me. Then in the next sort of circle, there was the family, the parents of this person, the sisters, their partners and children, friends, kind of. And then the next circle is the work community and the people that, had been present, healthcare professionals, all sorts that had been, I guess, involved in their lives. But interestingly, and this was the incongruence, I'm in the core of this circle. I am closest to the people that are most impacted, yet I don't understand or share that same grief because I didn't know this person the way they did and what they were grieving. I only knew the person in the last few years that I had seen in a very different way. And it was like, I'm closest to those that are just feeling all of these things, but I don't understand it. I can see it, I can appreciate it, but I don't understand it. I don't also understand, well, death by suicide is just so bloody complicated. I mean, there's, what you think you see, what you want to see, what you want to believe, trying to make sense of something, a choice, yet not being able to understand that either. And it was really difficult. It was really difficult because you've also got this pull to control and, as I said before, to try and centre on certainty. And a big part of that is understanding. And I didn't have any of it. I didn't understand the grief. I didn't understand, the reasons. And it was really hard.
And that's what's such a powerful opportunity of death in general. Because death, without it even being suicide, doesn't make sense to our life. The my life story that we try to get security out of, and let's be clear what that means. You spoke a lot about future expectations, future of what life is going to look like. I call this the my life story. So the my life story is created about what we believe would be reasonable to take place or happen in our lives. Suicide is not in that. It's not added to the image of my life. So it's a shock, of course, and I mean, it's a major one, but death is not in that either. What happens in the my life story is essentially what I believe will make me happy, what I believe if I get this, what I want, and if I avoid the things I don't want, I'll be okay. I'll have lived this life okay. If I can avoid these things and get these things, life will be great. And the things that I want, we tell ourselves a very convincing story about how reasonable those things are and how much we perhaps deserve them or not, and so on. And to any normal person, this would be okay. So it's very well justified that I have this story, this my life story. You only have to go on the internet, look around the world a little bit, and it makes no sense, whatever we think this my life story is we have in our heads that we think is so reasonable and should happen, and we're triggered majorly if it doesn't happen and all of that sort of stuff. So when someone commits suicide, it's not in the my life story for most people, I would imagine. That's a jolt, isn't it, to the security, because if you're deriving security out of the reasonability of that, and then something comes in that completely contradicts that, then what's secure? Okay, so this is what you're talking about. And when you're saying secure, we could also use the word certain, because certain and secure, they're related, you see. And then there is this amazing opportunity to actually discover what truly is certain and what truly is secure. There is actually right there a window of truth potential. However, because we are not conditioned to that discovery. We're not conditioned or pointed at that discovery in our general lives. Not many people are pointed where that truly is. Like you said, what happens instead is it's like that expectation is dissipated to the surroundings, meaning roles, people, whatever the case, to stand up and essentially prop up the story again. I don't know why this comes to me right now, but the COVID situation felt like that to me in terms of let's get back to normal. Let's get back to where we were. Kind of how do we...
It's safe. It's predictable. Yeah. And no, and look, I think just to add even more to it, the placement of self in a situation. So in painting myself into that picture, I had children painting me in the picture as now the mum. Like, you're it. You're no longer mummy number 2. You're mummy number 1. In fact, that was the reaction of the youngest within 5 minutes of hearing the news. And, the painting of myself in the picture by the family of my role, and my mother, and, her painting me in the picture as a slightly different role. And then me painting myself, which was actually probably the hardest to reconcile, because it was frustratingly weak in moments, and almost, I am ashamed to admit, incredibly selfish. I was looking at it at times, and I think it was the reflection of what I saw as the depth of this grief, and thinking, oh my God, like, I will never be loved as much as this person. What would I need to do to be equal to or enough to be grieved or loved as much as them? Or I'm looking at all of these photos and seeing all of these memories. What must they mean? Like, they were happier or more in love than, or had a depth that was greater than. I'm faced with all of these possessions, like things that have come out of their home, memories that they stored about the past relationship with now my current partner, or about their children. And I've inherited these memories. They're not mine. They're, in fact, were probably never intended to be in my lap or in my house. And I'm now creating a story which puts me down in that situation, and then seeking validation of something. It was pretty shocking to see where my mind went, and when it wasn't about me at all. How we make things about ourselves.
Let's open this up, because you've brought up such a profound topic. I speak about these things a lot, and most of the time the ears close when I speak about these things. And there's this, I wouldn't do that, I wouldn't feel like that, I wouldn't be like that, whatever the case. But when there's enough pain in someone's life and they're open and they're willing for truth, they see these things pretty quickly. Someone like yourself, you're talking about a very subtle thing that drives most behavior in life that is completely unaware of. So let's make that aware in this conversation. When I spoke earlier about essentially if I can create a my life story about getting what I want and avoiding what I don't want, and that will mean I'm happy, and that will mean I can breathe and I'll be okay. The way that that is achieved is by being in the business of others, which is to ensure by any means necessary that I'm loved and approved of. And if I'm loved and approved of, then I will get what I want and I'll be able to avoid what I don't want. So when you saw their grief, this that has been driving every action in your life anyway before this happened.
Yes.
And this is for everybody. This is not a Emily story. This is a me story. This is the next door neighbor. This is everybody. coming to a realization of this, which often happens in painful times, is I'm a prostitute energetically for love and approval so I can get what I want. And then it seems like, whoa, how selfish that is.
How absolutely disgusting. How, how, like, who are you? Like, what the? This is you couldn't be in a, I mean, that was the shocking part, is how in any circumstances, let alone this, you need to get yourself and your ego out of here immediately. This is not serving.
And the thing is, I've noticed in difficult situations, when someone's sick or unwell, or in times where things are really important, super important times, where maybe someone needs to be looked after or something's happened. And then all of a sudden, this drama starts erupting all around the one. Okay, so the one is the person who's committed suicide. They're not here to experience it, but sometimes people are here to experience it. And everyone starts their dramas around the situation itself because what's happened has derailed their sense of self, and they've lost their perceived control in the game. And now it's, how am I going to get that love and approval to establish myself again, secure myself again in the narrative I have in this life? And that is such a shocking realization that I have basically, not knowing, this is very unconscious. People aren't doing this consciously. It's driving from the dark areas. That's why I call this work shadow work, because it's in the shadows. It's not known. I've been doing everything for myself, and there's nothing wrong with that. The issue is when you don't know that's what you're doing. Because when you do know that's what you're doing, you can direct your energy in the places that create true freedom, compassion, service to others, because it comes naturally. It's not a covert, I'm going to do this for myself, but how can I manipulate the outside world to look like I'm doing this? The shame is so great in this process, in this way of being. The shame is so massive. Rare human beings like yourself right now, rare human beings will admit it. And in not admitting it, which just means to see it, it's not like you've done something, it's not a right or wrong thing. It's admitting means to see, to see this thing. So much prolonged trauma and drama takes place beyond the event in not clearly seeing these reactions and not clearly seeing these responses, because they then take place with the relationships. With, say, for example, you let this run. Okay, let's say you let this one take off on you. Okay, now that's going to complicate the relationship with these new people in your life, right? So these daughters, you are going to compensate there, and it's not going to be seen on the surface.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And it was like, I mean, we used to talk about kind of the radio frequency of, you're in the frequency of seeing what it really is, and then you kind of get out of it and you're back in ego land, and then you see what it really is, and then you're back in ego land. And it was like that. It was like that, but it was super strong because the situation was highly pressured. It was highly emotionally charged. There was, decisions that needed to be made, and, all time kind of critical as well. I mean, when you're thinking about communicating with teachers and, schools and networks, and decisions about funerals and, what then happens, and getting support for people or not support, like I was making with my partner a lot of these big decisions and being the face of our family into the communities in which we, engage with on a day-to-day basis. And in all of these presentations or engagements, I had the opportunity to go with my ego and make it about myself, or not, which was not appeasing, not getting into that track of getting validation of, well, how wonderful are you? And you're so loved and you're doing all of this. And isn't it amazing? Or taking control of people's business that really had nothing to do with me, to just let it be what it was.
Wow. Like, let's be clear about what the ego means. We're using this term a little bit. I have a simple definition for ego, which is what you identify with that is not who you are. That goes all the way to your body, to your mind, to your beliefs, to your memories. All of these things are witnessed. That's how we know they exist. We know a thought exists, a belief exists, a body exists, a sensation in the body exists, all of this. You know grief exists because there's a witness of this grief to say there's grief here. So ego is when we mistake ourselves to be the thing itself. If I'm the grief, then now I'm in the suffering. That's the ego state. Because when we use this word ego, it often is thought of some jock who thinks he's amazing and drives a Ferrari or something like that. This is not what ego is. From the state of being identified with things, we're very unstable because things keep changing. So it's like, how do I keep the thing to stop changing on me? Because then if it changes, then I don't know who I am, you see. Let's be clear, because when you're using this word ego, you understand that. You understand what you're referring to. And what you were saying there is, in order for this ego delusion that's trying to get what it wants and avoid what it doesn't want, I would go into roles or ways of being that would get people's approval and do this thing and that thing.
That's it. Yeah.
And you said, because I was aware of that, I was able to not do this reactory way that would have happened in the past. So you've seen yourself so much do, and you notice yourself in and out of that. Like you said, like there was times where you would, times you wouldn't. This is very, very important, because then you can accept the fact, because the my life story cannot accept the fact. The my life story is in denial that the fact took place. And when the fact is not accepted, the emotional release, the emotional experience, the mental experience, all of the things that have to process, right? Because you have to process an event like that. It's like, it's something, there's a grief process in this. If it's not accepted, there will be grief, but the grief will now turn into trauma. What is this trauma? The trauma is the false sense of myself, cannot deal with this. Of course it cannot deal with this, because it goes against yourself. It goes against the idea of yourself. So you cannot process this. So the unprocessed energy becomes this dysfunctional block that manifests as oftentimes addictions, need for distraction, phobias, we could go into thousands of manifestations of what happens with that. But we cannot avoid grief, even though we do our best almost every day to avoid it.
Well, how we do our best every day to avoid pain. And, I've been tested, as you know, Chris, had lots of opportunities to face pain. And what I've learnt from that and in that, and this was the biggest test yet, because the pain was not necessarily mine. I was a witness to the pain of the people that I love and I'm in the business of in that moment. And we're connected by the pain, but it's not mine.
For everybody, there's a similar pain that's taken place, which is everybody's identity has ended. So everybody has died in her death. Yes, everybody has died. You have died. Anybody close to her that has any identity basis with her has died in a way. Okay. So we can all agree to that, and we can all experience the grief of that loss of identity. Yeah. It's not a loss of yourself. It's just a loss of an outer manifestation, and it requires its own grieving experience, right? And honoring of that, and honoring of what was. And there's ways to do that that are very sacred and healing in that process. That's clear. The direct association or memories, love, affection, so on, that particular flavor of loss, you weren't experiencing the same way.
No. Well, I was experiencing a loss. Well, I created the possibility to experience loss of something that wasn't true. And I wonder whether I was doing this because I wanted to feel the same pain or more pain to relate, but I created when things happened, like, let's look through all of these old photos and choose some for the funeral. And I looked at these images of people very much who I thought were in love, who created children together, who had dreams together, and the pain was, am I enough? Would I ever be as loved as this person? Well, maybe not. Holy shit, that's painful. That's really painful. Or, let's listen to all of this music. And music is a big thing for our family and was very big for my partner and his ex-partner who died. Let's listen to all this music and choose music for the funeral. Well, let's listen to the music. Wow. Like, again, music is core to me. That was like shove another dagger in my heart, because not only am I witnessing the pain of this person grieving or thinking about what this music meant to them, but I've created a narrative or a story about now what that means for me in this situation. What if we never have a song like that? What if I'm not,
Actually, see what you mentioned there, just stopping there. One of the first questions in inquiry when you're in these modes is to look at the what if thoughts. When you're aware and you want to do the internal work, you will know, oh, there's a what if thought, right? There's a what if thought. So if I have a what if thought, I know I'm going to create something now. That's not actually reality. I'm going to go into a creation process. The awareness at the moment for most of humanity is when I have that what if thought, it's actually real.
And then the turn of events or the decisions I then make to change my behavior or react to a person or to manipulate a situation to get what I want, which is validation of you are loved, no matter what has happened with this incredible person that has chosen to finish the story here on earth for whatever reasons. It was really, and again, I had moments of being a complete child, like a fucking pathetic, needy, selfish child, and moments of being incredibly angry, and then moments of actual real peace, where my biggest saving reaction, the authentic one, was to elevate myself completely above it and to witness it, to be a witness, to observe it, to look at the beauty of it all. Because, this life that is no longer on earth did generate such joy, was very evident, such pain, such happiness, such beauty, the most wonderful children that I am now privileged to see every day. And what a complete blessing to witness the range of human emotion. Like, what a gift. So I had moments like that too. And be okay with not understanding anything, really, because it was none of my fucking business. The relationship, the death, was not my business.
The witnessing, let's talk about a little bit about that, because that's the key window of all of this. there is this witnessing which is unchanging no matter what. No matter what my life story is, you are the witness to when this person was here, you were the witness to when they weren't here, you're the witness to this very moment. That actual state of witnessing is unchanging. It is the stable place of every human being that is and often remains unnoticed or unacknowledged our entire lives. But death brings up the possibility very strongly that that's the case. And when you had the child having a tantrum, if this was not witnessed, which means it was judged and then it went into a shame thing or whatever, it then actually becomes part of your identity. That is not just something that's burping up in the grief of all of this. It has to in some way be rejected or be reacted upon and then made something again, because then it's me now, I'm this child, whatever. Instead of going, there's a childishness here I'm witnessing, and it is, wow, I can see, and it's very strong, and there's very strong feelings and emotions associated with this, and I've got crazy thoughts happening and whatever the case, but it's now not going through the filter of judgment and the filter of what I should be and shouldn't be, which creates doubt in yourself and more drama and more instability like this. It is not going to be comfortable by any means, but it can come and it can go like a storm. It can be here and it can go. It doesn't have to be held, then blocked into the system, then compensated for, because there's so much pain around it. It's like, I cannot ever go back there again. So I'm going to make sure life never touches this block in me, which of course, guess all that life does? Just pokes it like daily, right? And you're constantly just trying to protect this internal compensation that's happening because I wasn't able to accept life. The I that is the false sense of self, the egoic self, cannot accept life because life keeps changing. And the ego self is based on a false sense of being form, stories, roles, all of these things that constantly are in that change. So it's very important. When you mention the witness, you are here able to speak to this because and speak to things so shameful around selfishness and things like that. You can only speak to this because you've discovered you are beyond this as the witness of these things. Otherwise, it would be unbearable. It would be, I literally go in so deeply into denial. It would take physical illness. It would take other catastrophes, you know. If you would like to discover who you really are beyond the voice in your head and emotional states that cause relationship drama, stress, health issues, procrastination, sabotage, addictions, essentially all the drama and personal problems you can think of, come and join me for the Wake Up Experience, which is the first step in freeing yourself from the inside out. See the link in the description for more details.
Like, I employed every tool I think I had in my book, thanks to you, but it was like, you know, the brain gathering the evidence as well. And this went back, you know, to when I first met or re-met my partner, because we've known each other for a very long time, but not until the last couple of years romantically, of, you know, am I the second choice because this first partner had mental health issues and addiction issues and other things at play? Am I the second prize? And I had those thoughts even before we had explored the plausibility of her dying, was, you know, this belief of, well, you are the second choice. And then through her death, my brain went mental gathering the evidence to prove that that was true, that I was right.
Let's talk about it. But the proof is so key to the ego, because without proof, it doesn't exist. The ego state is doubt-based. So it's just going to try and find anywhere it can put its teeth into doubt. So when a relationship happens, if you're the second choice, which has no logic in it, there's no logic in this at all. It's just ego and nonsense, how you can position yourself as the second choice like there was ever a first choice. Like, you know, it's so amazing how we put choice on this linear scale, right? Of like, what? How do I expect life works? Someone has their their number one choice in life, and then didn't quite work. I'll just ring in a second choice.
I'll ring in the second best option. Well, I think it's the comparison. It's the brain is set to compare. It's like it's this or it's that. This is better. This is worse. This is the winner. This is the loser. This is the better. This is the less better.
I prefer not. I don't like to use the word brain, because what I've noticed is when someone discovers who they are beyond this state, then all of a sudden the brain doesn't do these things in the way that it did. So it's like, is it the brain, or is it more a state of awareness that looks after these things? Because as awareness, my brain's not doing what it was doing before. If the brain was just what it is, then it should be producing the same results no matter what, right? But the brain is used a lot as a way to be like this kind of almost slightly a responsibility alleviator.
Shifting. It's the brain's fault.
Yeah, I'm very aware. I'm very sensitive to when responsibility isn't as sharp as it can be, because suffering will creep in at that place. The key thing here is this response that you're talking about is universal, in that everybody is trying to get love and approval in different ways. And most people are shocked by what extent they will go to when life derails them and exposes the inner workings. So I am so chuffed that you brought this up, that you would bring up jealousy and doubt about yourself. And you know, when you're seeing the photos and the music and the da-da-da, and then you're thinking, someone has committed suicide and I give a shit about if I'm the second choice? Like,
I know. And also, like, yes, someone's chosen to end their life. Well, that is in and of itself, I mean, it's so significant, and there must have been so much pain and so much that I didn't understand or will never understand about that pain that isn't in any of these images to me, that's visible to me, or in the music that I hear, or in the stories that I'm told. And it's this kind of struggle to reconcile the kind of putting on a pedestal of all of the brightness and the lightness and the beauty versus the darkness and the pain and the suffering, which is what led them to die. That tension is still, for me today, tricky, I think.
It goes against the human egoic narrative. And you see this with death in general, and you see it with, like, say, people that we revere in the media who have taken their lives as well. And it's like, let's all choose a narrative to remember them by, right? That we can stomach, that we feel like honors what we loved about them. Because to look at this just as it is, if you were to look at it truly, it would end you. That's why we don't look at it clearly, because I want to maintain myself in this. So to look at this clearly, it doesn't allow me to keep what I'm maintaining in myself and look at it at the same time.
But then also, Chris, like, it can be all of these things. Again, why does it have to be one or the other? And that's sort of to the point that I'm saying
we selectively, with the false sense of self, make it one or the other.
Yes. Similar to how, there's a first choice or a second choice, or there's the winner or the loser. It's the same. We have to polarize. Like, why can't it be both?
Well, because if you have a sense of self that's separate to the whole, which is what ego is, then you have to polarize. Once you discover who you are, there's only what it is. There's only it in total. If you would like to download a free beginner self-recognition guided meditation audio to start your journey of healing and freeing yourself from the inside out, see the link in the description or go to selfintelligence.com. It's supporting you to realize who you are in total.
That's it. And that, I think, has been the crux of this whole event for me, is, again, an opportunity to really consider the whole person that I am.
And so with the whole, new roles can come, new situations can happen, new practicalities can take place, and they all exist in the whole. So it's not like I have to defend against this part, I have to, wallow over this thing and I have to take up obligation over here, It's just, there's a natural flow actually that takes place that is not the I trying to protect the story that I've generated. And of course, that will generate, and it does generate, love and respect, true respect and love in the relationship you have with everybody that's going on around you, because there's less of the delusional you in there, and you are so much happier. Just like triggers, okay? If someone is triggered by something, say someone's having a really bad day at work and everything has gone wrong, and then you're the one to cut them off, say on the road or something like this, and you've had a bit of a bad day maybe, or whatever it is, they start yelling profanities at you. So they pass the trigger on to you, right? So they've taken something personally, then they want to pass it on, and then now you either, it stops with you and it's like, no, I see this. I see what this is. None of this is personal. This is not a personal thing.
Yes, but how much do we consciously, unconsciously try to connect with individuals through passing or sharing the trigger or bringing them into the emotion? I think that rather than respecting what's theirs, what's mine, that's been a big learning too.
Okay, so that's what I feel like is worth elaborating on here, because you say got cut, that person yelled at you, you're now feeling like shit about that. You go home and then you may pass it on to your husband, and then they pass it on to their kid, and a trigger just goes like lightning through the ether of human consciousness. Now, this is exactly the same happening with this event. A bomb went off, right? And a shockwave has gone out to touch and spread the pain, right? Spread the pain everywhere. And those who are conscious use that shockwave to drive them deeper into their intrinsic peace, to discover deeper who they are. Those who are not awake to things will energize their drama with that energy that's come, and the pain body will use it to fortify its position. What I wanted to talk to you for is because there were people around you saying, wow, how have you dealt with this so well? Like it's just mind-boggling how you've dealt with this, right? You've said this. A lot of people have said this to you, because it's really unusual for someone, and not that you're claiming to be some enlightened person or perfect being or angel sent from heaven, nothing like this. An everyday human being going through all of the turbulence, right? But getting the feedback, getting the direct feedback, really genuine, right? How are you? You have dealt with this in ways that are very surprising, you see. And the fact is that, this is what you share with me, is everybody has this capacity. Once they know that place within themselves, once they understand truly, not conceptually, not in a fluff way, but a true way to take responsibility that frees you from that inside out of passing this drama on, which you could pass on to her kids, you could pass on to your partner, you pass on to your own kids, and in a chronic sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The elevation to witness, to observe, almost outside of oneself, and to seek that it's enough to just be present with a feeling or the witnessing of somebody else's feeling, and not have to create the ... So this is what that means, or now this is going to happen, or this could happen in 5 years' time, or they must think that. Shut that shit off. Drop the ... Just be present in observing what it is. Second thing, get really comfortable in not understanding any of it. Like, I might want to understand, but I don't actually need to understand because it has nothing to do with me at all. That is what I understand. I understand it has nothing to do with me.
Let's stop there, because someone in a painful situation, right, where they've all of a sudden been thrust into becoming a mother and thrust into a whole bunch of responsibilities and uncomfortable, like, practical scenarios and stuff, they could be sitting there with their hands on their hips going, excuse me, nothing to do with me. My whole life has changed. How can you possibly say this has got nothing to do with me? You see, what would you say to that, actually, if that was like the reaction to what you're saying here?
What do I mean? Well, the death in it of itself, like, that wasn't my life to take or end. That had nothing to do with me.
Okay, that's the simple one. But you talked about being second. You talked about being the second person. You talked about your roles changing. You talked about that. How are these got nothing?
That's also not my choice. It's not my choice.
No, but wait up. You're choosing to be a parent. You're choosing to be in this relationship where you're taking on grieving children. You're bringing them into your house. You're doing it. There's very practical decisions being made here. So what do you mean it's not your choice? How are you reconciling this?
I love these people. I love them well before this event, and I'm going to love them well after this event. And I've sat in the pit with them before this event, and I'll sit in the pit with them again a million times over. I can't predict. I mean, life's a mystery, right? You know, we got these plot twists that happen all the time as these amazing windows into what it really can be about. And so, no, it's not a choice. It's a privilege. It's a privilege. What a gift, right? And I'm so thankful for all the insights and all the amazing moments.
Well, the opportunity is wide open to be a victim of this situation, right? It's wide open for that. And what I'm seeing and hearing is through truly being in connection with your true self, that witness, it has allowed gratitude and humbleness and love to be the guiding principle in flowing with this event. Flowing meaning dealing with all those practicalities and showing up to choosing music for your ex, you know, just very bizarre roles that don't make sense at all in the narrative of life. Well, I'm going to help choose music, you know, or look at through these things that are like, I shouldn't be doing this. It's like, no. There's no I shouldn't be.
Bring physical possessions, bring art, bring, you know, photos on the walls of my home and, you know, and be present in conversations.
Well, because in a lot of relationships, even if you talk about the ex-partner or something, that can be taboo and can be a problem, not to mention bringing their photos into your house and these types of things. So it's like, what transcended all of that? You dropping yourself as that. Yes, it's not about you. And love is who you are. And the love that you are is being shared with these people. And love doesn't choose. Love is.
Love doesn't choose. It is. It is. In not one moment did I consider it a choice. I didn't. I don't. I feel incredibly blessed. And I think never more have I valued my values, which is also, I have to say, the third really big ticket item. You know what? You know, if you really, really, really get your values, they can guide you through any tough decision or moment. Like my well-being. So my health, my physical health, my mental health, and infusing that around me, it can be contagious in a really good way as well. I knew that I would be carrying more, whether it's practical things, housework, more, potential sleepless nights with children, adding on appointments, adding on discussions, adding on, well, actually, surprisingly, entertaining people, bringing people into our home, people that I didn't even know, to create space to talk about the death, to talk about what had happened. I was like, I got to have game on here with physical, emotional stamina. So my well-being value was huge, hugely important, and still is. And I think that's a really critical thing that can guide you and that you can hang on to when really difficult events happen.
Well, I feel like we could, keep cracking open. I mean, death is the greatest medicine of all. It's the greatest perspective provider of what's important and what's real and what's not real. And it's a huge potential. There's a gateway for letting go of fear even, and our false senses of self to the greater truth. And so I'm very moved to speak with you and have such a grounded conversation around this. And for those who have suffered with this or just generally are interested in having that deeper sense of stability within yourself, there's very specific pathways for that. We've worked on these for years before this happened. And
my mum said to me, maybe all the work was leading to this event now. And I hadn't really thought about that, but she's right. You can use as a vehicle any event that really gives you a bit of a slap as a wonderful opportunity to practice what actually can help create peace, create space, create truth, and deepen love for yourself and others.
These types of learnings, these types of skills, these types of habits are not known to be able to develop, you see. And that for me is the whole point of this podcast, is to reveal real people like yourself who have seen the benefit of this habit of seeing and habit of looking and capacity and skill set to do that, how much it's supported you through this extremely challenging time, that suffering was not necessary. The challenge is unavoidable, but the suffering of it and the spreading of that suffering was not actually necessary in this. Grief, painful, uncomfortable, someone dying, roles changing, all of these things, that stuff's unavoidable, but there is ways to learn how to really come through this with integrity and take you deeper into stability, instead of feeling like, if I have to deal with one more thing, I'm going to break. I'm so overwhelmed as it is. It's like, you know what? This is actually bringing me into a deeper space of strength and resilience, as you said. So thank you so much for being someone who's felt the call for that. And really, I'm so grateful that you have, and that the kids and your partner can experience the environment that you're creating around that in this really challenging time.
Well, thank you, Chris. I mean, you've done the work with me for a long time. So, yeah.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you got value out of this, please share it so that other people can benefit also. For more information about self-intelligence, including joining my next Wake Up experience or detailed information about my self-intelligence course, go to selfintelligence.com.